Hey, how's it going? This is Cinema Review, and it's been a while since we've spoken, but I want to get you caught up. I've missed you. I've missed posting. I've just been busy with other projects. I've been filming on other projects, and more Anthonics is coming out, but I've just been busy working. Got a new office space here. This is a little side room that I found so I can record these. And Anthonics Maximus Season 2 is coming out. It'll be this fall, late summer, early this fall, knock on wood. I've already started filming much of the episodes, so I'm more ahead now than I ever was with season 1. That I can promise. So I just kind of want to get you caught up with this, and hopefully I can get back on track, because I don't want to feel like I'm neglecting you, so the few people that watch. So here's the spoiler version of me catching up. The spoiler version. If you have not seen what I'm about to talk about, check out the non-spoiler and get all your information there. There are certain movies I'm going to tell you that I'm about to review. If you have not seen them, you can go ahead and fast forward to them to a point. I'll try to insert a time where you can get to it. Now, bear in mind, I'm also working in an office building, and I'm recording in an office building, so you're going to hear background noises. You might even hear doors slam because people don't know how to shut doors correctly. But we're going to get through this. Don't like recording cinema reviews in my home because it's the place I record Anthonics Maximus. I try to separate my worlds just a little bit. But before I go on and talk about 2019, let's catch up on some movies I didn't get a chance to discuss in 2018. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Alright, so the voice acting was great. All the actors playing in it were fantastic. A lot of big name actors like Zoe Kravitz as Gwen Stacy, Liev Schreiber as Kingpin. Just the list goes on. It does play on the whole multiple universe thing, and you do see different versions of Spider-Man. You even see Spider-Ham, voiced by John Mulaney, who I've actually started loving over the years, and even Spider-Noir, voiced by Nick Cage. Sure, let him show up in every superhero movie, why not? Lily Tomlin as Aunt May was hilarious. Whole new vibe of Aunt May. People say this movie is actually the best Spider-Man movie, and I can't say that's true. It's great. It's everything Spider-Man should be. It's very colorful. The music is lively. The references are there. Spider-Man, no matter which version Spider-Man is in this film, is Spider-Man as he's supposed to be. But you cannot compare cartoon to live action. With cartoon, you can get away with more. And cheaper. There were some shocking moments in the film, of course, like Spider-Man of the Miles Morales universe dying. That kind of shocked me. That was the Chris Pine voiced one. The movie is a very acidy trip movie. Even had Green Goblin in the film. A version I don't like, the Green Goblin where he's more of a monster rather than someone who's on a glider. I prefer glider Green Goblin, but Ultimate Spider-Man, he's a hulking monster for some reason. I don't know why. But it's totally high quality, and I do praise it. And I think as a Spider-Man fan, you should totally see it. Aquaman. Alright, Aquaman, my man. Jason Momoa is Aquaman. His chemistry with Amber Heard is perfect. Nicole Kidman as Aquaman's mother is great. I use a lot of words like great and fantastic a lot, and I should really buy myself a thesaurus. I'm sorry about that. Aquaman's dad, played by the man who played Jango Fett, of course. Jason Patric as Orm. Everyone did a great job. James Wan did a brilliant job directing once again. He's the man who's behind Annabelle and Creation and those horror movies. He has a great way of keeping the camera panning without doing many cuts. Oh, by the way, you also see an Annabelle doll underwater. I'm just gonna pretend Aquaman is in the same universe as Annabelle. In fact, Annabelle shows up in Shazam as well. The only complaint I had about the movie was that it was too long. Very, very long. It could be because I was in uncomfortable movie theater, my knee touching the back of the seat in front of me, and also a terrible pop version of Africa. Ugh, it was just nauseating. Other than that, it is a great, solid movie. It was disappointing to see very little of Black Manta, and I look forward to having him more in the movie, in the future movies. I was disappointed though because at the end he's floating out in the water after being defeated, and he's discovered by a ship. I was actually hoping that it was Lex Luthor who discovers him, so they can kind of continue on building the whole Legion of Doom thing. But no, it was just some guy, some reporter guy, But this movie wanted to stray away from Justice League and be its own thing, so I guess I can forgive that. One part did confuse me, though. It's supposed to take place after the events of Justice League, because they acknowledge that he battled Steppenwolf. But at the same time, this movie made it seem like he was meeting Mera, played by Amber Heard, for the first time. But we've seen her in Justice League, so I'm not really sure where the movie is supposed to tie in. Well, I guess after Justice League, because he gets the new Trident, right, in this film. And now I hear James Wan wants to do a movie just with the crab people in the movie, and you would have to make it like a complete horror film, because you can't really do much with crab people without it sound like a South Park parody. But yeah, Aquaman, solid movie. Mary Poppins Returns. It was a fun, lighthearted film. I never cared about the original movie, but I enjoyed this one very much, and I did feel like the movie continued the story very well, where they didn't try to make it its own thing, and it still fit tonally. No Julie Andrews, which is kind of a bummer, but it had Dick Van Dyke, and I'm just glad to see the guy is still kicking. Lin-Manuel Miranda is someone I want to see more on my screen. The whole chimney sweep thing, he had that going. I don't have really too much to say about the film. Just, it was fun. It was nice. That's it. I wouldn't really continue to watch it over and over again. Would I buy it just for the collection? Maybe. But I didn't hate the movie, and if it came on TV and I was with family and they wanted to watch it, I won't go kicking and screaming about it. Bumblebee. That was a fantastic movie. Fantastic. Excellent. Exuberant. Other explosive words. They finally figured out Transformers. Aside from the animated movie, this has to be the best version of the Transformers I've ever seen as far as live action goes. Very true. Much better than all the Michael Bay crap. Remember my review about The Last Knight where I was just pissed? This one, I was happy. I was having a good time. I was laughing. I felt for the characters. I wanted to see Bumblebee succeed. All the characters, all the robots, I should say, all the Autobots, Decepticons, they actually looked like their cartoon counterparts. I could tell who was fighting who. They finally understood the formula, and as I said in the non-spoiler, John Cena was great. And if they wanted to abandon the fact that this was a prequel and just call this the remake of the Transformers franchise, I'd be on board. I really would be. After all, this is supposed to be a prequel, but the stories do not match up. In the first Transformers, it was established that Megatron showed up to Earth a long time ago looking for the cube. Yeah, looking for the Allspark. And then the Autobots came much later. In this film, kind of goes in a complete circle. My favorite part of the film was actually probably the beginning. And well, the end too, but really the beginning, because you actually saw Cybertron. They actually fought on Cybertron. They established a real base of Cybertron. Now that could probably be because when they made the first movie, they didn't have full belief that it would be successful, so they were afraid to create Cybertron, and now they actually had the budget for it. But I really wanted to see Cybertron, and they finally brought it. I really appreciated that. Bohemian Rhapsody. I knew it was going to be good when I went into it. The music is great. The actor is, I really believed he was Freddie Mercury. Yes, story of real life events did get mixed up. For example, the movie ends with him performing at Live Aid, and he was actually very secretive of his real life. So when people complained that it didn't touch base of his sexuality, well, that's fine. He actually has said himself that he never wanted to be known for that. He wanted to be known for his music and how awesome he is. So when it came to that, it was fine. It was polite that they actually asked Mike Myers to play some producer in a film. I mean, if it wasn't for Mike Myers in Wayne's World, a lot of people would have forgotten about Queen. In fact, Bohemian Rhapsody was not even a popular song. Radio stations back then didn't even want to touch it. But when Wayne's World came out and they were playing that song, everybody went on board. Me too. And finally, for 2018, Ralph Breaks the Internet. Should have been Ralph Wrecks the Internet, but it was a fine movie. It was funny in parts. I still laughed, but the story wasn't really as solid as the first one. Common sequel trope, but this one, it was about them trying to raise enough money so they can buy the steering wheel that they won on eBay to fix Vanellope's video game, which doesn't get fixed at the end, and in the end she ends up staying in another video game, which kind of makes no sense because I think it was established in the first movie that if something happens to their video game, then something happens to them. They can't stay in other video games. And what was weird about the movie is that it acknowledges that YouTube exists, but Ralph was making videos through some other site that doesn't exist. So it's like they got the licensing for YouTube to be in a background, but not for them to be a full focus. I guess the real attraction of the film was that the cameos of the Disney princesses. Kudos on the living actresses to come back and provide their voices for all the princesses. It was cool seeing Star Wars characters. It was cool seeing some of the Marvel characters. But that's pretty much the value of the movie. It was underwhelming. I mean, I'll buy the movie. And I'll watch it again if brought to my attention, but just wasn't as good as the first one. But overall, I would say 2018 had some very good movies. Now, finally, for 2019, we're going to get caught up now. I haven't seen every single movie that came out, but I've seen quite a bit. And because I've been so busy with my multiple projects and moving offices and people in the background making noises, I am going to try to get us caught up to date, all right? I especially like how this is supposed to be soundproof, but you still hear background noises. 2019 movies. Okay, so you got the Lego Movie 2. Lego Movie 2 is kind of the same way I felt about Wreck-It Ralph 2, or Ralph Breaks the Internet. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as the first movie. But I did enjoy this sequel much better because I went into the movie expecting very little, and I was delivered a lot. The story, the plot, everything just matched up well. The whole idea of them going into the world of, well, basically the little girl's world, because remember, everything is an idea of a boy, and now we're incorporating the ideas of his sister, and it plays off very well. I loved how Batman started to fall in love with the villainess, and she is in love with him, but it's a weird manipulative back and forth. The thing that really just kind of took me out of the film was it didn't have Will Ferrell in it. I mean, it did, but he wasn't physically on screen. Maya Rudolph played the mother of the children. That was the spin on this. Will Ferrell exists, but as an off-screen voice. It was almost as if he was too busy to show up on set, so they ADR'd him, and you just hear him shouting in the background. When he shouts, "Where are my pants?" that's kind of a nod to the first movie where, like, the sitcom that the characters are watching is Where Are My Pants? I enjoyed the film just fine. I actually thought Lego Movie 2 was much better than Lego Batman. That's saying a lot. Sorry, Batman. This is the one thing I have to kind of shrug off here. But Lego Batman made this movie too, so... Oh, Captain Marvel. I'm all for feminism. I'm not anti-feminism. Just because I have a different point of view of this movie doesn't mean I don't believe in women's rights. In fact, I very much push for that. This movie is a bad example of doing it, though, because they could have taken any female superhero and done it, but I really think Captain Marvel is so planned, especially Brie Larson in this film. She is so melancholy. I think the only thing I really liked about the movie was just a few elements. I liked that they introduced the Skrull. I hated that the Skrull turned out to be the good guys. Yeah, I didn't like the fact that the Skrulls were the victimized good guys, because in the comics, they're vicious. But they do play on the whole fact that over the years of being in disguise, some of the Skrull actually started to show some empathy for it, the human race. So we can actually just take some, lose some on that. I loved the alien cat. I was confused by the fact that the Tesseract was with the Skrull, because this is supposed to take place in the 90s before all the Avengers really happened. But the confusing part about it is, how did it get up to space? Because the Tesseract, as we learned from the end of Captain America, was found by Howard Stark. Did he send it up there at some point? I don't know. Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury was great. Pissed me off, though, that his eye didn't get lost in a battle, but it's because the cat scratched him. I was just happy that I saw Coulson on screen again, outside of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I don't watch. Some of these shows are a chore to watch, so I don't watch them. Stan Lee cameo. We got the Stan Lee tribute in the Marvel logo, but we also got the Stan Lee cameo, and I really think this was brilliant. Now, the cool thing about the Stan Lee cameo, though, is that he was actually reading the script to Mallrats, a movie that was made in the 90s at the time. So yes, on his way to film his cameo in Mallrats, he was reading the script. Although in Mallrats, he had a full beard, but whatever. Still a cool cameo. I honestly felt, though, Captain Marvel was no different than any other Marvel filler, and I think that's why I kind of get a little exhausted with Marvel films. They get to the same formula and it repeats itself over and over again. Yeah, fine, you figured out a formula people like, but change it up once in a while, please. It's just, her story is very similar to Green Lantern's story, that's all I'm saying. And the way she defeated the first Captain Marvel, the traitor, is kind of lame. It was just name-calling slap fight. And I remember pre-production, everyone was making a big deal of Ronan the Accuser showing up in this movie. Oh, he showed up, but it was just there for him to watch over the fight and then disappear. He doesn't actually jump in a fight. He really has nothing to do with the film. So yeah, this film makes the Skrull the victims and the Kree the villains. And everyone's talking about how the ending had this great space battle. I don't see it. I don't think it was that great of a space battle. The movie wasn't painful to watch, and I'll watch it again, but we all know it was just made so it'll occupy our time until we get to see Thanos in Endgame. Dumbo, on the other hand. Dumbo was a very, 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 very enjoyable live-action movie based on a cartoon. I never cared for the original cartoon. It was just it was only an hour long, so to me it was just a very long cartoon episode of some random cartoon. Between the storks and the crows and the racism, it was just an annoying cartoon. The live action did away with all that. It had a few nods. Didn't have any crows, luckily, but it had storks flying over. And the movie actually focuses more on the sideshow freaks, which I really like. I was glad that even though the kids were in the film replacing the mouse, they served a purpose. Their characters actually motivated others. Danny DeVito's Ringmaster was great. Michael Keaton is always Savage as a villain. And this really hit the feels. It really did. I thought the whole, get ready to rumble guy showing up to announce Dumbo was very tacked on, but it is what it is. Eva Green played a great acrobatic performer, and she had such a thick French accent, so in a scene where she's saying bonjour and Dumbo makes a sound that sounds like bonjour, I thought that was actually quite adorable. I enjoyed seeing Dumbo go through and learning, and I also was scared for Dumbo, like in the fire. It hit me in the right emotional feels that it's supposed to. In fact, for being a Tim Burton film, and I do criticize the fact that Tim Burton has kind of gone the way of just adapting other work that's not original. Like, he hasn't really been original in some time, but I really did think Tim Burton kind of shined in this one. With Tim Burton, you give the man a circus or Christmas time or any kind of random flying colors and the actors he's worked with before, and he'll bring you a great film. And he doesn't need Johnny Depp. No, he can work without Johnny Depp and produce some great stuff. I love Dumbo. Shazam. For a superhero that I never used to like, I loved this movie. This movie was actually fun. It had some energy. It also had darkness, but it wasn't day and night type of thing. It had a smooth transition into both. I loved the random actor cameos in the film too. So it had a very strong vibe, like you're watching the movie It mixed in with Stranger Things, and it helps that one of the It actors was in this film. It was just interesting because, like, Shazam exists in the world of Justice League, but you have Justice League merchandise in the background, like they're toys. And I guess you can just accept it that in that universe that the superheroes have become so big that they've become marketable. Kind of in the same way as when you're watching Logan, and Logan's actually reading an X-Men comic book, because it's not the X-Men comic book we know, but it's because they've started to market, if that makes sense. I actually liked Dr. Sivana in this movie. I don't like him as a villain, but in this movie he was great. People complain about the fact that nowadays superheroes always have to fight villains that have the same amount of power, but of course they do, because what, you think some superhero is going to go around and pummel a weakling? It's like watching the old George Reeves Superman TV series where it's Superman, but he's just punching a bunch of mobsters. No, I really think a hero is as good as a villain, and this villain was great. He brought the level menace. The villain, as I said in the non-spoiler, is kind of the other side of the coin for Shazam. He was also a tortured boy, just like Billy Batson, but Billy Batson becomes Shazam and he becomes a hero, where Dr. Sivana, who was a kid who had very terrible upbringing and a very vicious father, grew up to be a villain. By the way, the father is played by John Glover. Some of you may not recognize him, so let me explain. John Glover is the man when it comes to his acting. John Glover plays Lionel Luthor in Smallville. He also played Dr. Jason Woodrow in Batman and Robin. In the comics, Jason Woodrow actually becomes Floronic Man. John Glover provides the voice of the Riddler in Batman the Animated Series. This man has been around quite a bit for DC, and he still kept his same John Glover charm in this film. The monsters were vicious, kind of bits too CGI-y is that an adjective, CGI-y? But a bit too much on that. But at the end, when all the foster kids, by the way, were very loving in this film, just like the foster parents, and that was a nice change to see in a movie. They could have just been all mean, but they actually showed a real family in this film. But anyways, as the foster kids all get their Shazam powers, I didn't think that would happen in this movie. I thought that would be kind of a future thing, but they just laid it out there. And it was cute to see that the crippled kid Freddy, when he becomes his own Shazam, he's played by Adam Brody. And as far as the, lack of a better term, a heavy-set kid who becomes Shazam, which I'm pretty sure they hinted at him liking men, because when they accidentally get transported into a strip club, he said that wasn't his thing. So, equality? But when he becomes his own Shazam, he's played by DJ Cortana. Now, the reason why I mentioned Adam Brody and DJ Cortana is because back in the early 2000s, they had a Justice League movie in production called Justice League Immortal, and Adam Brody was meant to play Flash, and DJ Cortana was going to play Superman. So I guess this was going to be their chance to be superheroes. A couple things that were kind of weird about the film, not weird, but just was that at the end you kind of get Superman, but it's a different actor and they show chest down. And that's probably the best way they can go with it. Clearly they couldn't get Henry Cavill to show up in this film. And that's fine. I kind of expected not to have him in it, but I think just the fact that he even showed up at all, it's kind of like a sign of disappointment knowing that he just couldn't do it. So deep down in my mind, I knew, it's not him. It's kind of like either have him or don't. The mid-credit scene with Dr. Sivana in a prison being spoken to by a caterpillar with a talk device. I know he's actually, like, that villain is actually someone important, but it's still a caterpillar. It's not a villain they're trying to set me up for the next movie. Fine. The only main complaint, if you had a gun to my head and I had to complain about Shazam, this is me nitpicking because I can also dig up an excuse for it too, is that Billy Batson as a teenage boy is very mopey because he doesn't want to be with a new family. He's trying to look for his mom. But then when he becomes Shazam, played by Zachary Levi, he's suddenly happy and jumping around and acting like a 10-year-old, someone much younger. It's like the two actors were nothing alike. But again, if I was to defend it, I suppose if I got Shazam powers, I would be acting like a big kid too, so I'll excuse that. The only thing I don't excuse is that there were harsh bullies in the film, like bullies enough to nearly kill a crippled kid, and they were kicking a crippled kid. And at the end, their only comeuppance was them getting atomic wedgies. I mean, come on, these are like psychopathic, probably someday future murderers. I think they warrant a little bit more than a wedgie, right? Like, I'm not saying kill them, but could have done a little bit better, right? But there was one superhero movie that I did not care for one bit. I just saw it recently too. It's Hellboy. I never read the original. I've never read the comic books, so it's probably the most accurate, but I have to base my opinion off of the original movies with Ron Perlman, directed by Guillermo del Toro. I liked those movies much better. They were lighthearted, they were fun, they were more like a superhero film, and I get it. Mike Mignola, who created Hellboy, didn't like the superhero aspect. He liked the horror aspect, so he probably would have liked this one more. But with that element, this movie, the remake, is very dry. It's not the worst, but it's bland. The villain played Mila Jovovich. I mean, what, she just wants to rule the world. That's pretty much her only motivation. Even had like elements of King Arthur. Like, King Arthur is actually Hellboy's dad. I mean, I'm sorry. King Arthur isn't Hellboy's dad, no. He's actually an ancestor for Hellboy. And when they showed King Arthur, they also did that annoying thing. The thing I hate in editing in films is that speed ramp. Not in a fun 300 kind of way. I mean that, like, he gets off of a horse and speed ramp. It's a ridiculous gimmick. And yes, it's rated R, so more blood, more gore, and more cussing. I can deal with all that, but you gotta give me a real reason for it. The blood and gore, okay, it's a horror movie, you have monsters, very nicely designed monsters, but not as nicely as Guillermo del Toro's monsters. But the gore and horror and stuff and like real casualties because they're demons from hell, it makes sense, okay. The cussing, it's almost like the script was written by a preteen when he just found out his parents allowed him to say a curse word. Just never really fit right for me in any of the scenes. I didn't like the side characters either. There was no Liz, there was no Abe Sapien. Abe Sapien shows up at the end as a hand imprinted on a tank, but no, I didn't care for any of the side characters. Professor Broom was not even really a warm, decent guy that was originally played by John Hurt. This one just was really cold and distant and more mission-minded. Again, I didn't read the original comics, so I could be out of line here, but I'm just speaking as a moviegoer. The actors weren't bad. The actors were actually great. Fantastic actors. If it was any other movie, I would say they did a fantastic job, a super job, stupendous. but it's Hellboy. It was all like they were all the actors acting in a different film and didn't understand what this was. The actor trying to play Hellboy, he tried, and I can see it, but he just didn't capture him. He didn't really have the charisma. The only character I really liked in the film was someone who showed up briefly, and that was Thomas Hayden Church as the Claw, or Lobster Claw. And that was even in a flashback where they totally disrespected the main villain of the original movie, which is Rasputin, by making him just some quivering loser that just dies off real quick. I just think, again, not a terrible movie. It was just exhausting. I was counting the minutes before I can go. The whole time I'm watching Hellboy, I was literally just... And that's pretty much my catch-up for 2019. I don't really have much more further to say. I'll probably think of things later as I'm editing, and by then it'll be too late. But if you have any thoughts, please leave a comment. Otherwise, I'm hoping to see more progress in my videos and get things done much sooner and out there more. I especially want to release one of these for the next Avengers movie. And of course, keep a lookout for more Anthonix Maximus reviews and the Anthonix Maximus web series being worked on and coming soon. Take care.